if I could look to my own both areas of concern and areas of hope, they're really two sides of the same coin. I think many of our viewers today will have followed closely the events of the 2nd of June, when there was a demonstration on H Street in front of the White House, which those of you who have been to Washington, D.C., immediately to the north of the White House, there's a park called Lafayette Square. Right across the park, there's an old Episcopalian church called St. John's Parish, which is, again, a common place for U.S. presidents to visit, to attend church, etc. It had, in riots in the previous weekend, been burned, was boarded up. There were ongoing demonstrations in the streets in front of that church. But somehow during the course of the 2nd of June, President Trump made a decision to give a speech in front of that church. And it's now kind of a famous speech with him wielding a Bible. And that itself caused a tremendous amount of backlash in American society. But the process by which that street was cleared, with police were involved, the military was involved, et cetera, really became a real flashpoint. For those of you who are interested, the Washington Post did, I think, Pulitzer Prize-worthy coverage of that event, which wouldn't have been possible even a few years ago. They just pieced together police radio and hundreds of cell phone videos to map out a minute-by-minute case of how that day progressed. And the reason I list that is because at the time, that moment seemed to be a moment where American democracy could have been on the brink. You had not only the President of the United States, moving peaceful protesters using tear gas, but you had him accompanied by the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in uniform. And that stark militarization of the issue, or another way to put it, the politicization of the military, really concerned an awful lot of people, myself included. The flip side of that is that in the intervening weeks, there has been a remarkable amount of pushback. So you saw 89 different current and former defense officials come out and state that this is not the role of the military. The use of the military internally is unconstitutional. You saw a tremendous pushback to an op-ed by Senator Tom Cotton in the New York Times calling for the U.S. troops to be involved in putting down protests in the United States, ironically done in the exact same day of the Tiananmen massacres 31 years before in China. But since then, you've now seen the Secretary of Defense Esper come out and back away from the statements he made at that time. Just today, we had the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Milley, come back and say it was a mistake. You've had Colin Powell, Admiral Mullen, and most significantly, perhaps, the first Secretary of Defense under President Trump, and highly respected Jim Mattis, all come out and push back. So that snapback, that step back from the brink, is something that I think is both needed and deeply encouraging, because there was a real worry just a week and a half ago in terms of that process. So